I never want anyone to feel the way I felt that night, hopeless and helpless. But also, that's the moment I learned how important mindset is. And that's a moment I decided I was not a victim. And that's where I am today, I believe, truly because of that.
Welcome to the Grant Wise Show. This podcast helps ordinary real estate agents build extraordinary companies. Let's grow in 3, 2. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Grant Wise Show. I am pumped for my interview today. And I think that after you listen to this entire episode, you're going to be pumped about everything going on in your life. Long Doan has one of the most incredible stories that you will ever hear. I got to interview him for a podcast years back, and he graciously appeared to come back and reappear on the Grant Wise Show. Long has built an incredibly successful real estate organization in the Minneapolis market called Realty Group. And they have, I think, approximately 750 agents spanning 3 different states. Long was recently rated as the most admirable CEO by the Twin Cities Journals in Minneapolis. And in 2022, his organization was rated the number 3 fastest growing real estate firm in the country. And you are in for a treat. Anybody that I've ever met that knows Long feels like they just know a friend. He's such a good guy. So Long, thank you so much for stepping in and being on the podcast today.
Hey, Grant, thanks for having me here. You and I, every time we get together, it's like just hanging out, having fun. So I'm sure there'll be one of those as well. And as you know, we love to share, and anything we can share to help anybody else, that's something that we enjoy doing. So I'm excited to do that today with you, bud.
Yes. Well, I love interviewing people that have built extraordinary companies, and you've done that, but you have also led an extraordinary life. And I would love if you could just take a few minutes and tell us all the backstory, because I know your story, and I know it was not all sunshine and rainbows. But how did you get to where you are today?
Well, the short version is I'm originally from Vietnam. My mom and dad were both professors. So when the communists came in and the American left in 1975 in the Vietnam War, a lot of people know from history. For those younger listeners, maybe it's from books and movies they've seen, right? So most communist countries have this thing called reeducation camps. This is where they put people who can think for themselves as a threat. Well, my father, being a professor, was arrested when I was 8 years old, and my 2 younger brothers were 4 and 2. I did not see him again until I was 32 years old. So from the age of 8 to 13, I was the man of the house, and then 13 as the oldest. There was a lot of people who left Vietnam for a better life, and we're a coastal country, so we were called boat people. I was one of those people who left Vietnam with less than 50% chance of making it. It was my 3rd try. I made it when I was 13, ended up in a refugee camp in Malaysia because the Red Cross has set up a lot of refugee camps outside of Vietnam just to help out refugees like us. So Wikipedia page nicknamed it Hell Island at the time, considered to be the most heavily populated place on earth. I was one of 40,000 people in the size of a football field because I was an orphan and only 13 years old by myself. I was there for less than a year, and my uncle, who sponsored me to America, lived in Minnesota. That's how I ended up in Minnesota. My younger brother of 4 years made the trip 2 years later, and luckily he also made it. He ended up in Indonesia, a different refugee camp. He came to America. I moved out, raised him from 8th grade to high school, worked 3 jobs, went to the University of Minnesota. Wow. Traveling all around the country on behalf of my father, who was then adopted by John McCain, the former POW, prisoner of war in Vietnam, and a senator in Arizona. So, that's the only reason he didn't get killed off. So I accepted awards on his behalf, ranging from the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Award, where I met all the Kennedy family, wrote a speech, on his behalf from the age of 16 to about 20, did all that stuff. Sponsored my mom and my youngest brother over several years later, and eventually got my dad out when I was 32 years old to see him after 22 years in prison. So I started my career right out of the University of Minnesota and went to mortgages. But that's a short version of my journey from Vietnam to here, and I share my story in more detail a lot of places because I want to let people know it doesn't matter where you are or where you start, it's where you can go. So if I can do it, anyone can do it.
What a incredible, incredible story. And I think that not that it's a story that's fitting for the time that we're living in, but right now in the real estate space, there's a lot of adversity, and your story is certainly one about overcoming adversity. How have you used your story over the last year, 2 years to help agents understand how to overcome what's going on to thrive?
At the end of the day, Grant, you and I have many of this conversation every time we get together, right? It's all about mindset
Uh-huh.
because we cannot control what happened to us. We can only control what we do. And the market is the way the market is. Can't do anything about it, right? It is what it is. But also, if you look at it in every industry, including real estate, there's always ups and downs. And every time there's a down market, the number of transactions do go down, but the number of agents also reduces. So for those who continue to do well, you and I had a little conversation before we jump on this. The one who have gone through this before, understand the adversity, understand how to handle it, have the right mindset, actually do better. I believe that in any industry, including real estate, good market produces lazy agents and bad market produces good agents. Because when it's so good, it's so easy, right? So we all get a little lazy, we all get a little bad. And then when the market's tough again,
Mm-hmm.
the good agent rises up and do well. And I know a lot of your listeners are those good agents. We all have our challenges, but Mike and I, my business partner here at Realty Group, we still have a very good year. Of course, wasn't as good as the previous couple of years, but we still had a good year in comparison.
It's so true. I've heard you say this before. Life's going to throw you a set of circumstances, whatever that might look like. It's not about the circumstances themselves. It's about how you react. And one of the things that I've heard you say before is you can either be a victor or you can be a victim. And the decision that you made early on in your life is just that you were going to be a victor. And I think that that is such a relatable story for everybody in the real estate industry right now, is that this market's either going to be one that makes somebody, perceived as a victim or a victor. And the cool thing is if you listen to this, you're the one that gets to decide. Like you're the one that gets to make that decision. So take us back to when you made that decision in your life, because I think it's something that agents need to hear right now when they're thinking about, oh, the market's bad and nobody wants to move right now and this, that. And it's like, let's get outside of the industry for a second and hear a story about what really can help drive this point home.
Yes. I think that's something that we don't do enough of, is that we understand the why, like our why. You kind of hear people talk about, okay, the why, it's kind of sound whatever it is, but it's truly is a game changer. Because once you know who you are and why you are the way you are, you will understand and you can do what you need to do to make the appropriate changes, right? So for me, it wasn't until my mid-30s when I'm starting to learn more about you should know your why. And I started going through that journey, Grant. And for most of us, they say our why is created from usually between the age of 8 and 15. It's usually a period of our life or one event, right? So for me, when I was 13, so I finally made it on my third try. I was one of 153 people underneath a little fishing boat. Okay, 153 people underneath a fishing boat for 3 days. We were sitting down there, cramp up, going number one, number two, the whole thing, right? Smell bad. Got up there. When we got out to international water, that's when you see hundreds of people on top of a floating boat in the movies and books. That's because we can all go on top now, and we float till someone pick us up or we die. And we get to refugee camp. So anyway, that's my third try. And I finally made it to refugee camp, and it was 11 days since I left. Okay. So this is actually when I got to send a telegram back then. Telegram, I know we still use Telegram back then, to my mom to say that I made it. I mean, I know you have kids. I have kids. We send kids to sleepover next door, and you call, text them the whole time.
Yeah.
Let alone not know for 11 days your 13-year-old firstborn son live or die, right? So that was definitely a difficult decision for her to make, and there's a whole different story behind that. But it was my first night. I was at the refugee camp. When it finally hit me, Grant, and this is when my why, when I go back and went through this journey, I realized that's when my why was. So first night, checked in, finally made it. I remember I found a little spot on the beach. It was very crowded, the most heavily populated place on earth I was at the time. And I remember the night had just came. It's been a long day. And I remember I cried. I cried all night that night, Grant. It's the first time I've ever emotionally cried, right? I was 13. I've been hurt before. I got mad for something. I cried before, but never like that. It's because I remember finally thinking, well, wait a minute. It hit me that I made it. But then I realized, But is that a good thing or a bad thing? Am I lucky or am I unlucky that I made it? Am I lucky that I made it because half the people die never made it, right? I try. Or am I unlucky that I made it because everybody I know on the other side of the ocean, as I'm looking out there, I'll never see again. And it was my job at 13-year-old to go figure out, take care of myself, and then take care of my family back in Vietnam. That was my job if I made it. And I had made it. So I remember, man, I cry all night struggling with, wait, am I lucky? Am I unlucky? Am I a victor? Am I a victim? And I remember the sun was starting to rise up and people starting to wake up. And I don't know anybody here, obviously, right? I'm like, all right, I got to make a decision here. And that's the time I did not realize until much better and later in life how important your mindset is. I could have decided I am a victim. I'm 13 years old. I'm a refugee boy. I'm here by myself. I'm an orphan. What am I supposed to do, right? Go through life making excuses that, I'm a victim. I'm a victim. Or I'm a victor. And at that point, I decided I was a victor. I decided I am lucky. Put your big boy pants on and go figure this shit out. I remember telling me that. And I went on, and the rest was history. And from then on, I remember realizing the way I felt that night, right? Being hopeless, being helpless. I'm like crying. I'm like, what am I doing now? I don't know what to do. And I got to figure this shit out. And then I got to figure out how to take care of everybody on the other side of the ocean. And it was true, except for my youngest brother, who I sponsored over later with my mom, and then my dad, my immediate family. Those are the only one I ever saw again. All my cousins, friends I've not seen. My grandparents have passed away. Some uncles have passed away. 43 years since I have not seen anybody from the day I left. So I remember being helpless, hopeless. Then I realized that's my why. That's why I'm on here with you. You and I love to share and help people understand, and help people do whatever to grow, because my why is I never want anyone to feel the way I felt that night, hopeless and helpless. But also that's the moment I learned how important mindset is. And that's a moment I decided I was not a victim. And that's where I am today, I believe, truly because of that.
Well, and I believe that anybody listening to this show is having that moment for themselves right now. When you sit back and you hear a story that is so impactful, you realize that the time that we're living in today, everybody has that exact same choice. And they didn't have to, thankfully, they didn't have to experience what you experienced as a young child. But I think, who is it? Will Smith, he said a lot of stuff that happens to you in your life, it may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. And you have a responsibility for listening to this to, as Long said, figure this shit out. There is no other alternative. But what's so beautiful about this is it puts you in a position of control, because you can go out there and you figure it out. And unlike Long's story early on, you're not alone. You've got this industry is so good. I mean, it gets such a bad rap from, I think, society, and there's things that could certainly be adjusted that would alter the way that the industry is perceived. But when you go inside of the industry and you meet people like yourself, and you meet, all of the other people that are in this industry that are adding value and that are coaching and are consulting and are pouring into people, you realize that you're not alone. So many people have figured out how to have success in this industry in any market and are doing it. And if you can latch to somebody, I think you realize that if you decide that you do want to be a victor, and you don't want to let a moment like this define you in a way that isn't in your best interest, that there's so many incredible people out there that will help you. And I think I'm speaking for you, and you'll have to articulate this back, but coaching has been a big part of your life as well. Is that true?
Yeah, because I love to pay it forward is how I see it, right? Because you're totally right, Grant. Everything I went through, yes, I bust my butt. I have the right mindset, but I did not get here by myself. I have so many people out there, especially our industry, who pour into our industry and help anyone who want or open to being helped, right? So I also believe in a couple of things to touch on what you're saying. There's three ways we learn as human, okay? One is considered the easiest way to learn is by imitation. If someone will figure out how to do it, let's go copy them, right? And in school it's called cheating, and life is called sharing. So, your format here is to show people what's working so people can imitate those successful people you have on your show, right? The second way to learn is considered the hardest, is by experience. Okay, you have to experience it yourself to learn. The experience I went through, I would never wish it on any one of my my family member, my kids, whatever. But it's those experiences that make me who I am. So it was the hardest way to learn, but it was one of the greatest way I was able to learn. But in the format like you have here, we can also share our experience so people to learn from it without having to go through it themselves. Okay. But the third way to learn is considered the most noble is by reflection. So everything we learn here, we listen from other people's experience, from imitating, go back and reflect on it, see how it works for you, which lead to, you said the word choice many times already. I did not realize this until later when I happened to run across a book and I read it. It has to talk about the choice theory. My entire life, I realized it's a choice theory. We all have choices. It doesn't matter where you are, where you came from, right? So there's only three choices, I believe, with any situation you put on in life. One is you can choose to change nothing. Okay. Sometime if it's working, maybe good. But for the most of the time, that's a definition of insanity, right? Choosing to do the same thing over and over again and make no changes and expecting different results. Many of us fall into that comfort zone, right? I don't want to make any changes. I know things not working, but I don't want to make any changes. Well, that's choice number one. Make no changes, which is the definition of insanity most of the time. The second option or choice you get to make is change how you think. Okay? If you think you can't, you're right. If you think you can, you're right, right? We all know that. So you get to make that choice, not somebody else's. Okay? Which leads to the third choice you can make is change what you do. If the thing you're doing is not working, do something differently. Learn from Grant, learn from all these other speakers you have out there and how they do it, and go do it their way and give it, get out your comfort zone and make a choice to do things differently. So I think once you start thinking in that term, you'll see it's a life-changing.
1,000%. We are the sum of the choices that we make. And the reality is that, you're making a choice right now just listening to this, right? Like we are the sum of the decisions that we decide to make. And I think that this whole interview so far has kind of unintentionally become a great process for creating life-altering change in your life if you realize that, it all boils down to mindset. Just recognize flat out there's nothing else. Like in a crisis, it is your mindset that is going to ultimately get you through whatever it is that you're experiencing. So that puts you in a position of control, puts you in a position of power and understanding. Is like you may be the reason you're in a mess, but you're also the reason you can get out of the mess, right? Not everything was something that wasn't your fault. Some of us have made dumb choices. I know I personally have. I've made some dumb choices. And if you sit back and you recognize it, you take ownership of it, you can move through it. So recognize that it is your mindset. Second thing is recognize that there's other people that have been here before you. I love what Tony Robbins says. He says you can compress decades into days if you just go find people that are where you want to be and copy what it is that they're doing or imitate what it is that they're doing. And I love how you've expounded on this. And so first, it's just recognizing that you're in control. It's your mindset that's going to ultimately get you through this. It is your beliefs. It's your habits, your rituals, your routines, your disciplines. It's the things that you do consistently. But then the second thing is go outward. Somebody else has been where you want to be. In the real estate industry, we are not testing things anymore. We know what works and we know what doesn't work, right? It's very black and white. We know how to build successful real estate companies. We're not pioneering anything new here. So reach out, go looking for somebody that can help you, somebody that is where you want to be in life, and cling to them. I think that's a great second step to take. What would be the third? What's the third thing that somebody else could do if they're trying to get through maybe a tough time right now? Recognize that they're in control. It's their mindset. Go get somebody else can help them. But what's the third thing that somebody could do to take this step towards building an extraordinary business?
Absolutely. So everything you said is important, right? And there's steps. You have to do this first before to get the next one, right? So yes, get the right mindset. Then go imitate people or learn from their experience, as you say. And then we talk about reflecting, which lead to action. This New Year resolution we just had, 2024, let's go, baby. We're all like 2023 was crazy for some, good for other, but 2024 is going to be amazing. So here's what's happening. Most people have this New Year resolution, right? Because it's a new year. And I'm sure you know this because you're like me, you're really good in stats and trackings and stuff. 92% of people do not achieve their goal. They fail. Only 8% actually reach their goal. It's not just New Year's resolution. It's anything in life. We all set goals and 92% of us never get there. Why? We don't execute. We do not put into action. And this is the hardest where I see, I don't care what business you're in or personal growth or professional growth, the people who don't, the 92 percenter are the one that just cannot get to the next level because they don't execute and because it's not the right mindset. It's the growth versus fixed mindset. But whatever our goals we have, this is where coaching is so important. You're so right. Yes, you and I do coach, but we encourage people to get coached because there's some stat out there, right? You're 300% or so more successful when you get coached, right? Because you get to learn from other people. But when you reach out, you learn if this is your goal, you should learn the process of reverse engineer back your goal. Because, right, we all should have a goal, whether it's a true end goal for us personally or like a business goal we have for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years goal. Once you have your goal, you reverse engineer back all the steps you need to get there, whether by yourself, reflecting, or getting a coach who can help you to look out from the inside in and they see what they do. And then once you have those steps, reverse engineer back, you create an action plan to hit those steps to get there. Because most of us will say, I want to close 30 transactions this year. Great goal. But how do you get to 30 transactions? We have to reverse engineer back. Here's an example. 25% of your deal will fall through. Okay. So I'm going to use 25 so my math is easier. So let's say you want to close a 30 transaction, 25 transaction. Well, 25% will go through. That means you need to have 35 clients or something because 25 of them will fall through, right? You need to have 35 contract, listing contract, buyer contract, whatever. And then 50% of people you meet will sign with you. So that means you might need, multiply by 2, you need 65. I'm just going down the quick, reverse engineer back. 65 appointments you need to set. Of 65 appointment, you need to make maybe every 10 calls you make, you got one appointment, right? That means you need to make 650 calls. Connecting with somebody. And then every time you dial, 50 dial, only 5 people pick up 10% or something. You reverse engineer back those numbers. Now it might look like you need to make 600 calls a year. That sounds like a lot, but if you do 600 calls a year, but you divvy it up 5 days, work week, whatever it might be, now you get like 10 calls a day. These are the things that people don't do, and they don't follow those actions, and they realize by November of this year, I only closed 6 deals. I'm way short of my goals.
There's this saying, it's like, well-intentioned people don't accomplish anything. Because it's not about having good intentions, it's about having good action. And I agree with you. There are a lot of people that have started this year, and I don't think realize it's not too late to sit down and say, okay, I want to hit 50 transactions this year and just do exactly what Long just talked about. I don't care where you get the opportunity to make the calls. I don't care if it's by generating leads, if it's by organic social content, if it's door knocking, if it's cold calling. I'm in no way, shape, or form romantic about how you get to the conversations, but knowing how many conversations you need to have in order to reach your ultimate goal for the year 2024, I think is really important. So no matter when you're listening to this podcast, stop now and do this if you haven't done it. And don't become overwhelmed by it. Because what some people will do is like, oh my gosh, I got to make 600 calls. And they view it as this Everest type set of steps that they've got to take. Few people will reverse engineer it back and say, wait a second, that's only 10 calls a day. I can make 10 phone calls a day. Anybody can make 10 phone calls a day. It's like, okay, I've got it. And then do that. Once you understand what it is, do that. And don't let resistance come into your life and keep you from achieving the things that ultimately you know that you were destined to achieve. I have personal experience with resistance. The way that I was raised, the generational chains that you work to try to break throughout your lifetime, or my own personal doing. I've experienced what it's like to know exactly what I need to do in order to get to a certain level of success and to not do it. And this is why I do think that having coaches is so empowering. I work with John Cheplack. He personally coaches me. And when I work with Chep and I'm spending roughly $1,000 for a phone conversation for about 20 minutes, I know that every week, if I don't show up and have had taken the action that I was coached to take, I'm wasting my resources. I'm wasting his resources. Is this implied accountability is what he always talks about. Is like when you know that you're going to show up in front of somebody that is going to ask you why not, or you're going to show up in front of a crowd there's this implied accountability. There's this subconscious level of activity that you feel convicted to take because you know that there's somebody that is going to be standing there another week going by saying, you didn't make 10 phone calls today. Why not? And so I could not agree more. You've got to take good action. Man, this has been such a good conversation. We've talked about mindset, we've talked about choices, and we've talked about action and accountability and coaching and all this other stuff. And I want to respect your time. So I'll probably wrap it up here. What is that first step somebody might need to take after listening to this specific episode of the podcast today towards becoming extraordinary with everything that we've talked about?
Again, once you reverse engineer back and whatever that step 1 or 2 is, take that step. The next day, don't wait until Monday, first day of next week, this day, that day. Do it right now. I have a quick example I'll share with you real quick is what I did. Because I know when I set a goal, it seemed like very hard, right? Because we all want to, especially we want to like shoot for the moon, right? So we set big goals, but if you reverse engineer back and you know the little step you got to do, you know if you're confident to do those steps, it will happen. So this is a few years back now. My kids are now 20, 23, and 26. But when my 2 boys, the older one, when they were younger teenager, we were going to take a trip to Mexico for spring break, right? Minnesota, snowboats. We get away in the winter. And I think they were at the time maybe 15 and 18 or something. And I remember they're like, hey, Dad, let's go to the gym and get in shape. So, because there's going to be a lot of chicks there. So, of course, my response to them was, I'm bringing Mom. So I'm bringing Stan to the beach. I mean, I'm out, right? But I would like to work out with you guys to get, in good shape. Nothing wrong with that. So, of course, they right away gung-ho young, let's go to the gym every day. And I told them, okay, this is going to be a life lesson for you guys. So just give me a little bit of time. It's going to sound weird, but I will be with you, working out with you at the gym in 1 week. But we're going to start today. They're like, okay, that's kind of weird, but let's go. So the first day, I went, put my gym clothes on, and walk out to the garage with them. I said, all right, you guys, go ahead. Have a good workout. Like, what's going on? I'm like, I reverse engineer back all the things I need to do to get to the gym. That's my step 1. I got to put my gym clothes on. Okay. Next day, I went out with them, put my gym shoes on, and got in the car and drove them to the gym and dropped them off. They're like, what's going on, Dad? Trust me, this is my step 2 I need to do to get into the gym with you. Okay. Third day, they're starting to get the idea now. I went there with them, walk around the gym, see you later, get out. Right. The fourth day I went in, I did 1 apparatus with them. We did a little bench press. I'm like, all right, I'll see you. And then by the 5th, 6th day, I was there with them, working out with them. Okay. That's a step. Accountability is what you touch on, is the next thing. If you don't track all your KPI to keep yourself accountable, or have a coach or a partner, a buddy system to keep you accountable, you will not do it. During that time, a couple of days, I'm like, I don't feel like going. Guess what? Come on, Dad, let's go. They were my accountability partner without me realizing it, because they didn't do that, I would just skip a day or 2. See what I'm saying? So I think reverse engineer back the plan and have the right mindset, because you will fail. Matter of fact, when one of the questions people ask me and you, I bet you all the time, was something you would do more of if you look back 10 years, 15 years ago, right? I say fail more, fail faster. Because we only learn when we fail. Every time we succeed, we don't learn anything. So we have a saying that win or learn, right? Win or learn. Every time you fail, you learn from it. So that's my recommendation to anybody who wants to take their business from right about to here, is all the things you already recommended. Take that journey on your why you want to do what you want to do, because that will be ultimately the reason that will drive you on those days you don't feel like doing certain things. If you don't have a coach or an accountability partner, right? You need to be self-accountable. And then reverse engineer back, take those steps, and then don't be afraid to fail.
Man, such good advice. And I hope that everybody listening to this gets the point of what Long just talked about. Is so many people in the beginning of starting something new, you're all about intensity. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go run 100 miles today, or I'm going to go make 100 calls today, or whatever it is. And you don't realize that in the beginning, it's not about intensity, it's about consistency. And to develop a strong belief that you can achieve what it is that you've set out to achieve, reverse engineering to those micro steps, just walking out to the garage, you don't know how impactful that is, because you took a step that was so easy to get to where it is that you wanted to go, that it was like, I can do this. That's not what some people do. Some people would go into the gym day one, they'd kill themselves. They would get their lactic acid all built up. They'd have DOMs. They wouldn't be able to sit down on the toilet the next day. And then, and then say, I'm never going to the gym ever again. That was awful. And if you do it in reverse, the way that Long's talking about, you'll develop such a belief, and you'll develop the habits, rituals, routines that you need. It's such a good lesson, man. Thank you so much. I was actually a little tired coming into this podcast interview, but I'm actually on fire now. I feel like I could go run through a wall. So I appreciate the conversation. You helped me today. And I know that if anybody's listening to this, you're going to help them as well. So I can't thank you enough. I know you're a busy man, but I appreciate you stopping by the show, Long.
Always good to have you and be with you, Grant. Thank you for having me.
Love it. Love it. And thank you all for continuing to listen to the Grant Wise Show. This was an epic episode. We'll make sure that we connect all the ways that you can link up with Long in the show notes. Make sure that you do give him a follow. He's got such an incredible story, such an incredible man, and he'll definitely help you grow your business if it's something that you need help with. I appreciate you all, and I'll see you on the next episode. Stay wise. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grant Wise Show. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, leave us a review, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks.